I'm going to start this off by saying you might disagree with me. You might. And that'll be okay. But I'm going to use Scripture to prove my point. And that there are folks that might disagree with my conclusions. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if you're right, you're right. We won't know until, hopefully not today. We won't absolutely know. But what we're going to be discussing this evening is, what do the dead know? What can they know? Let's go first off to 1 Samuel chapter 28. 1 Samuel 28. And we see Saul, King Saul, as a desperate man. Okay? King Saul is a desperate man. And we see what he is about to do. Saul has lost Samuel. Samuel died in chapter 25. Samuel is the prophet. Samuel is the prophet that anointed Saul king. Samuel is also the one that Saul ignored many times, of where the word of God came through Samuel and Saul just did what he wanted to do anyway, or he just completely went off in his own little direction, is what he did. Now, we just look at the fact that here Saul finds himself having to go against the Philistines again. And he goes to inquire of God to find out, should he go against the Philistines or not go against the Philistines. So we just begin in verse 5. When Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. And when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, either by dreams or by Urim or by the prophets. So there are prophets in this day. We don't know who he was able to see. There's plenty of prophets other than Samuel in that day. Now, there's not Samuel now. Samuel died in chapter 25. But there are prophets around. And he inquired, trying to find out. Now, why isn't he given an answer? He's not given an answer in dreams. He's not given an answer by way of use of the Urim. He's not given an answer by the prophets. And that is because the Lord has left him, as he said he was going to do. He's left him. He's not going to receive any answer from the Lord. So what does Saul do? Saul's going to do something that he's done before, in points of desperation, deciding to do something he shouldn't be doing. Going back to chapter 13, we don't have to actually go back there to read it. Chapter 13, you have a similar situation, and he's waiting on Samuel at that point, and Saul offers his own sacrifice to God in preparation for going to war. Now, the problem with that is Saul is not permitted to do that. Even as king, he's not permitted to do that, because that's only for the priests, who are specifically, he can't make himself a priest. He's from Benjamin. The priests are specifically direct descendants of Aaron, who is a direct descendant of Levi. All right? Now, Saul is from Benjamin. But let's just look here for a second. Then, verse 7, then Saul said to his servants, find me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servants said to him, in fact, there is a woman who is a medium at Endor. Now, what is a medium? A medium is someone who supposedly is able to talk to the dead. That's what she's able to do. And I use the word supposedly because what's about to happen, I do not believe at all that she had the power to do this. That it's God who's going to reveal this, not her. Matter of fact, she's quite shocked as to what happens. And Saul disguised himself and put on other clothes and went, and 2 men with him. And they came to the woman by night. And he said, please conduct a seance for me and bring up for me the one I shall name for you. All right? And who does he want? He wants Samuel. Now, here's my question. If the living prophets aren't telling him anything, why does he think that Samuel can tell him something? Okay? What does he think Samuel could possibly know? Now, here's the irony of it. While Samuel was alive, Saul just ignored him anyway. So why all of a sudden, now that he's dead, and why now all of a sudden do you want to talk to him now? Because if you ignored him while he's alive, you're going to ignore him when he's dead. So, but the question is, what do you think Samuel's going to be able to give you? Now, as it turns out, he is going to hear from Samuel. And Samuel is going to get his information where he always gets his information, which is from God. He's going to get that, and he's going to tell him what's about to happen, and that is that you go against the Philistines, you're going to die. All right, so what does Saul do? He goes to the Philistines and he dies. All right, which proves the point that you just ignore him anyway. He can tell you you're about to go do something that's going to kill you, and you go do it anyway. All right, well, what was the point in doing this? Now, we have in this places such as Leviticus 19:31, which states, give no regard to mediums or familiar spirits. Do not seek after them to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. So once again, what is a medium? Someone who's going to pretend to speak to the dead. All right? So we have to ask, why do you want to speak to the dead? And quite often there is the idea that the dead would know more than we do just by being dead. All right? Typically, it wouldn't be, I want you to talk to Uncle Ken to, who did he mean to make this will out for? Okay. Who's supposed to be the recipient of his will? It usually isn't something like that. It's something far greater, and an expectation that somehow the dead will know more than perhaps they do. Because as we can see in places like Luke chapter 16, and we'll get there for a bit, but we're not going to read the whole thing. Luke chapter 16 with Lazarus and the rich man, while they can talk about people still alive, they can't see the events of this world. They can't see that. They're not privy to that. They're in a different place. They're in the Hadean realm, and they can't look into this world. They're receiving people from this world every day as people die. They're going into the Hadean realm. All right? But they can't look into it. We have Isaiah 8 and verse 19. When they say to you, seek those who are mediums and wizards who whisper and mutter, should not a people seek their God? Should they seek the dead on behalf of the living? Question. Well, no, you don't seek the dead. You don't try to inquire from the dead. Seek God. All right, which Samuel failed in seeking God one way, so he decided, well, I'm just going to try to contact Samuel and see what Samuel has to say about all this. Well, let's now go to Luke chapter 16, because this is not a parable at all. And there are many reasons to know it can't be a parable. And first off, what is a parable? A parable is taking something you know. A vineyard. You know what a vineyard is. A farmer. A fisherman. Pearls. You know what they are. Taking something you're familiar with and then comparing it to something you know nothing about, so that you learn a little bit something about what you know nothing about. It's similar to this, and this is how it is similar. So now you know a little bit more about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven, and there when Jesus is giving parables, they have never seen the kingdom of heaven. That's not until Acts chapter 2. And so he describes it with things that they have never seen. I'm sorry, he compares it to things that they're very familiar with. All right, a master and our landowner or a king, that they understand. With this, it would be comparing what you don't know with things you don't know. All right, because he's talking about what occurs immediately after death is what he's talking about. And we're not going to read all of it, though I would like to, though for time's sake, we won't. We're just going to go into the middle of a conversation to verse 27, and this is the rich man who's talking. He's in torments. He's talking to Abraham, who's in paradise, or also known as Abraham's bosom. He's talking to Abraham. Once again, in parables, you don't have real people in parables. You have a certain king, a certain landowner, a certain father who has two sons. All right? You never have a historical figure being quoted in a parable, ever. This is not a parable. These are real events. Now, the rich man is talking to Abraham. Then he said, I beg you, therefore, Father, he's talking to Abraham, that you would send him, that's Lazarus, to my father's house. For I have 5 brothers, that he may testify to them, lest they also come to this place of torment. Now, why am I bringing out this? Because we get a little bit of insight as to what the rich man knows, and he's dead, what he knows. All right, let's just list some things in this. One, he knows where he came from. And he remembers fully his family. He remembers his brothers, and he knows his brothers are wrong. He also knows that he has been wrong. Otherwise, he wouldn't be where he is. The problem is, he doesn't know how he was wrong. I don't guess that's a problem. It should have been solved here in this life. But he doesn't know how he's wrong. I'm going to tell you how I know that. Who's he talking to? Abraham. What's he asking Abraham to do? Send back the dead? How does Abraham ever have that power? How does Abraham ever have that power? He doesn't. I have a distinct feeling, though I have no scripture for it, that Moses, when Moses died, that he never asked Abraham to do something he knew Abraham couldn't do, because he has a different faith. What I'm getting at is that the faith and the knowledge that the rich man had when he died, he still is carrying that into the next realm. The things that he knew here, he knows there. Now he knows he was wrong, but he doesn't know how he was wrong. He doesn't know that yet. There hasn't been judgment yet. He doesn't know how. But he's still behaving like he's holding Abraham as deity. Saying, and as Abraham has some sort of ability to send back the dead to go preach to the living. When did Abraham ever get that authority? Because a number of weeks ago we talked about Christ having the keys of Hades and of death. He can do it. Nobody else has those keys, not Abraham. Now the point I want to make, I'm going to reiterate it, is that the miscomprehension and the misunderstandings and the faith that the rich man had, that isn't magically or miraculously or any other way changed when he died. It's not been corrected. It's too late anyway to be corrected. It's not corrected at all. What can he know? He can know that he was wrong. He can know that. He can know immediately that his soul continues on. Whether he believed that or not, I assume that he probably did. but that his soul lives on. He can now see the realm of the dead that he had never seen before. He's in torments, but he can also see across the gulf, that expanse there to paradise on the other side. He can see that. He can know those things. That's a new experience for him, and he's got that. But things that he never experienced, things that he didn't hold in this life, aren't suddenly given to him in Hades. He carries that with him. What do I mean by that? I mean someone who, let's just say a suicide bomber today, who killed himself, lifts their eyes up in torments, they don't suddenly realize, I guess I should have followed Christ. They don't suddenly realize that. I mean, they might, but it's not given to them. It's not given to them. They can know, well, this was wrong. They can know, well, obviously what I did and what I believed were the wrong things, but that doesn't mean they now have the gospel that they didn't believe, or suddenly they have knowledge that they didn't have beforehand. They don't. Nor will any of us. It'll just be the experience of going from this life to the next life. That will be it. We'll still hold the same memories. We will still hold the same beliefs. Now, things can obviously change over there, but it's not done in some transit sort of way. Not at all. That people hold conversations on the other side. We see that happening. Now, there's another thing in this. Let's go to Matthew chapter 25. Let's just go there quickly. Matthew chapter 25, I think, is where we want to be. And I want to look at this. Chapter 25, Matthew 25, verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in His glory and all His holy angels with Him, then He will sit on the throne of His glory. Now, what is this? This is final judgment. This is final judgment. He is speaking to all humanity, all human souls. All the nations will be gathered before Him, and that means nations that are no longer around. Nations that would have died in the flood of Noah's day. It would have happened there. It would be nations that they were here on the earth in the past, but now they are no more. All right? All the nations will be gathered before Him, and He will separate them one from another as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. So it's the righteous on one side, the unrighteous on the other. And He will set the sheep on His right hand, but the goats on the left. All right, He's not separating nation from nation. He's separating the righteous from the unrighteous. Then the King will say to those on His right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer Him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the King will answer and say to them, "Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me." Notice, He has to explain His saying. He's got to explain His saying because they don't quite understand what He means. Now, we can know. On that day, we can know exactly what He means because we've got it in front of us. But there would be many generations that wouldn't have this information. They would not have the book of Matthew at all. We can know it. Now, we come to this. Then He will say to those on the left hand, "Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink." And He continues on, "I was in need and you did not supply any need at all, then they will answer him saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not minister to you? So they have no idea what it means. They don't know what it means. And he explains it to them. He explains it to them, which means what? That just because someone has died doesn't mean they suddenly understand everything. They don't. Nor will we. You won't understand everything. People dying today will take what they know here to the next realm. Now, there are some things that are unusual. I will say that. Things that I can't explain other than it is a fact. But it applies both to the living and the dead. All right, let's go to Luke chapter... no, that's not where I want to go. Where is it? Let's go to Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7. And I forgot to put down where I wanted to go. And I may be able to find... Yes, let's go to Matthew chapter 17. Matthew 17 is where we want to be. Now, verse 1, now after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John his brother, led them on a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking to him. Then Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Now, how does he know that was Moses and Elijah? He's never seen them. He has never seen Moses and Elijah. They both died centuries from each other and centuries from Peter being born. They were gone. How does he know who those are? He does. If we were to go back to Luke chapter 16, we would see where the rich man recognizes Lazarus and he also recognizes Abraham. He could never have, Lazarus he knew in this life. Abraham he couldn't have. Not in the least, because Abraham says they have Moses and the prophets, talking about those brothers that the rich man left behind. They have Moses and the prophets. Well, if Moses and the prophets have been written, if those books have been written, Abraham's been long dead. He's been long gone. Now, how did the rich man recognize Abraham? And also, we just have to ask, how did he recognize Lazarus? Because he does. And also, Abraham is able to tell the rich man, you had your good things in the other life. Okay, now you're tormented. You had the how would he have known that? But we ask now those are the ones in Hades. But here in Matthew chapter 17, we have Peter, who's very much alive, seeing Moses and Elijah and knows who they are. This is what is known, and I'm not the first to come up. Matter of fact, it's known as the recognition of souls. He's able to recognize them. How? The same way that the rich man could recognize Abraham. How it is, I don't know. But it seems to be able, that ability seems to be both with the living and the dead. That the living can recognize souls when you see them, should you see them, and those that are in Hadean realm can as well. Now, once again, how is that? I don't know. I can't answer that. But that's what is happening. Now, with that, that's something that the dead do know. They do have a recognition of souls that happens to be there. Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 7. Matthew 7, and I just want us to look once again. It is Jesus speaking, verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Verse 22, many will say to him in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you, depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Look at this. Did they not learn from that somehow, did they not learn that you are wrong? Did they not learn why they were wrong? Because they're arguing with him. We've done these great things. And that's why I say the faith that they had, they're taking with them. That it's not suddenly that suddenly they have received the gospel and they know what they should have done. Now in this lifetime, there would have been those that they already knew the gospel, they just rejected it, but they still thought they were right. They still thought they were right. Now he's correcting them and saying, no, you were lawless. If you're not doing the will of my Father in heaven, it doesn't matter about any of these other things. You did not keep the law of my Father. You didn't do that. And of where they were probably oblivious as to how that was. Because they're still trying to argue, but we did all these things, did we not? And he doesn't deny they did it. He doesn't say you're lying. He doesn't say that in the least. But they were wrong. They were lawless in all this. Now, this is not an evangelistic sermon in the least. But I want us just to kind of see concerning that of, and coming soon, well, I say soon, coming eventually, we will be looking at Luke chapter 16 from going through the entire events that Jesus relays concerning Lazarus and the rich man. And that's all part of the history of mankind, going from the past, the present, and the future with mankind. And we need to do that at some point coming up. But just for the sake of looking at things, because quite often people have questions concerning the other side, concerning how will it be like, what will it be like after death? Well, we have some things given to us where it doesn't have to be a major surprise at all. We can't know precisely what Hades looks like, other than there is a massive gulf, a massive expanse that is there, with paradise on one side, torments on the other. The righteous on one side, we know that Lazarus is there in paradise. Abraham is there. Moses and Elijah must be there. And the other righteous, who we wouldn't even know their names at this moment. We wouldn't know their names. And all the wicked on the other side. So it doesn't have to be a surprise to us, but we are carrying our experiences, our knowledge into the next part of our existence. And I know no other way to look at it by the things that we have seen thus far. I have no other way to look at it. And that someone who has a misunderstanding today dies today in that misunderstanding isn't corrected. They can know they were wrong. They can know there was a misunderstanding, but they may never know why until judgment. Or unless somebody corrects them on the other side, which we already see. Lazarus is being, or rather the rich man is being corrected by Abraham. That Abraham can't do it to begin with. And even if it was done, it wouldn't help them. They're rejecting Moses and the prophets anyway. So if they reject them, they'll reject one even if he comes back from the dead. Now, we will all be judged. We'll all be judged. And we all, unless Christ comes back, Our lives will come to an end. Everyone on this earth. Our life comes to an end. And the testing ground is closed, and the time of testing is closed, and the time of judgment begins. And Christ is very specific as to what's going to happen on that day. Very specific. And that it's explained to us in various ways what's going to happen. There will be books that are open, and then there is the book of life that is open. And those that are not written in the book of life are cast away with Satan and his angels into what the book of Revelation describes as the lake of fire. A massive thing where the wicked, demons, Satan, unclean spirits, all cast away for eternity. But there's a promise not given to Satan. Christ didn't come to help anyone but mankind. Didn't come to help angels. He came to help us. And there's a promise given to us that if we are abiding in Him, what does that even mean? We have His words in us and we are doing His will. Trying to be faithful servants. Trying to be faithful servants. Then He will welcome us home. This evening, we need to look at our own lives, ready ourselves. Whatever needs to be done, let's do it. There's no need for waiting. Waiting just risks an eternity in hell. Make the correction necessary. This evening we ask that if you need to respond to the invitation, that you come as we stand and sing.